Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for episode 3 of Ask Us Anything Analytics. Today with me, I have Ethan Aaron, CEO of Portable. Ethan, how's it going today?
It's going well. Great to be here. Excited for the conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for joining us. For those of you who, or for those in the audience who don't know you yet, could you just give us a little background about yourself?
Totally. So I've had roles in a bunch of different parts of the data ecosystem. I was building dashboards at a startup, doing product, buying and selling data. When we got acquired by LiveRamp, I stood up our data stack at a publicly traded company and our data team and all of it. And then for the last 4 years, in 4 days, it'll be 4 years exactly, have been running Portable. So we started this from the ground up, and we're an ELT tool. So we're focused on pulling data from 1,000 different systems and putting it into Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, et cetera, for clients so they don't have to think about it.
Nice. So that's 2019 you started Portable?
February 19th, oh, 3 days. February 19th, 2020, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Nice. So just so everyone knows, so Ethan and I first met, I had posted in DBT Slack looking for a WebEx connector. So I just, there's a channel in DBT Slack called like connectors or something like that. And I was like, hey, has anyone successfully gotten the WebEx data out? So I needed like chat history, I needed attendance and stuff like that. And within like 2 hours, Ethan chatted me back and was like, hey, go try this with the free trial. And I just thought that was so cool how like, you know, a few hour turnaround on a connector. So first of all, thank you for that. That's a really cool kind of platform that you're building off of. Can you tell us a little bit about the back end of Portable and how like you're able to do this so quickly and in a repeatable way?
Yeah, so it's pretty straight. So here's the secret sauce behind how we do what we do at Portable. Building connectors is extremely boring, not fun. And the way to think about it is there's a bunch of stuff that keeps coming up. Maybe it's authentication, maybe it's pagination, maybe it's whatever. And we've spent 4 years just focused on never doing the same thing twice. So you can think about it as like we have tooling internally at Portable that allows me or people on my team to go look at API docs and say, okay, great, we've seen this. Like these are the headers we need, these are the query parameters we need, et cetera. It sounds so simple. There's a lot of edge cases that come up in this, and being able to every single time you see an edge case to say, we're not going to let this be an edge case, takes a lot of saying no to stuff. So for years, we were still saying no to things like HubSpot as a connector. And even today, we can't build Salesforce. So that's the secret sauce, is we've just banged our heads against the same problem for 4 years. And our only goal has been try and build a platform on which we can build 10,000 integrations. At this point, we've gotten to, the last I checked was 1,061 connectors. So we have a path to get to 10,000 as long as we can find them. But that's the approach we've been taking.
Nice.
Very much platform play.
So before we get to my first big question here, I just want to check in with the audience. We have like 33 people watching on LinkedIn right now and 1 on YouTube. So I don't see any chats coming in. So can someone on LinkedIn just test the chat to make sure that we're getting the questions coming into the platform? Maybe say where you're from. That would be great so we can make sure that this is all working. So my first big question for you, Ethan. So you have made some LinkedIn fame, I'll say, by being taking contrarian positions on a lot of things. So one thing is like companies should only have 10 data sets, companies should only have 10 dashboards, and then maybe retire a data set, retire a dashboard when a new one is needed. So I think that's definitely makes sense in my head for a company of your size. But what about for even just like a small, medium CPG business where they're going to have a complex supply chain? You know, they have MRP running, they got purchase orders, they have production orders, they have production readiness, and they have production quality. They got sales orders, they have sales invoices. I could think of like 10 business topics, and each business topic might need 10 KPIs, 10 dashboards. So what is your thought process around if that position that you take kind of scales with company size and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would think about it through the lens of a couple things. So one, if you were a centralized data team and you were building for the leadership team, If you go to the leadership team and say, hey, we're a complex e-commerce business, we have 50 different metrics that matter, they're going to be like, cool, like, what do we actually need to care about? What matters to us today as a business? And if you can't distill that down into the 5 to 10 that everyone needs to be looking at every day and actually paying attention to every day, you're just going to throw a bunch of numbers against a wall. So, but to your point, as things scale, you might have one set of 5 metrics and dashboards. The way I think about things at Portable is our company strategy changes, let's say quarterly. So quarterly, we have a planning session. We come out of that planning session with new goals for the quarter. One quarter, it might be build a ton of connectors. One quarter, it might be get a bunch of meetings. But whatever that quarter is, whatever those goals are for the quarter, those define the 5 dashboards and metrics that matter to us as a business. It's how many connectors do we have, or how many posts did we do on LinkedIn, or how many people signed up for our upcoming conference. But it depends on the quarter's goals as a business. And I would try and focus that on 5 to 10. 5 to 10 dashboards. Each of those could have 3, 4 tables or bar charts underneath it, but it's really focused on that. If you also have a marketing analyst focused on helping your CMO or helping your head of digital paid ads run ads, in that world, in that microcosm of your organization, I would still keep things focused to 5 to 10 dashboards, so that when you're actually talking to the CMO or to the head of digital at your business, you can say, here are the 5 things we care about. We do not care about everything else. And it really just comes down to a question of saying no to the stuff that's not important. I think everyone doesn't want to delete all the metrics and all the queries because they worked so hard on it. You got to keep everyone focused. And if you don't do this stuff, how are they supposed to know what's important? And I think that's a challenge a lot of people can't wrap their head around.
So would you say, for leadership, the executive suite certainly shouldn't be looking at more than 10 dashboards, but in organizations that have that are very broad, manufacturing focus, where then you have a lot of departments, that each department might have, let's say, 5 to 10 as well?
I would kind of think about it as, depending on how your data, how ingrained your data team is inside your organization. If you have one person, one resource, I would focus on the 5 metrics or dashboards that matter to your C-suite and your board. That's it.
Yeah.
If you then find out that one of those 5 is paid advertising, and your marketing team is spending $100 million on paid ads, it very well might make sense to hire another person and or allocate resources to help use data to allocate that spend. So in that, you're going to have 5 metrics. How much are we spending? How's it allocated? What's the return on ad spend? The next one might be supply chain. If you find out that that metric is so valuable that you need 5 things for your CMO to dig into, you can allocate the resources, prove the ROI of doubling down on that, and focus on it. The question then is going to become, okay, in a year, is paid ads still going to be really important to your business? For some businesses, it very well might be. For others, what can start to get scary is if you do that and you have 5 core dashboards, 5 dashboards for a CMO, 5 core dashboards for a supply chain team. Every quarter, those global priorities might change. And your marketing person might be like, oh, like, marketing analytics are not the top priority for the business.
Right.
How do we reallocate that resource? So I tend to run and recommend running data teams extremely lean. And if you want to add the most value in a company, start at the top.
That makes perfect sense. That's awesome. I really like that approach, and I've started to adapt that into my consulting practice a little bit, where if I'm coming in just to, let's say, the supply chain team to help them with their purchase orders and understand where they have shortages, I'm not just working with the business people to figure out what their pain points are, but I'm also asking the director who brought me in, like, hey, go find out from the CEO what he wants to know about what's going on with the procurement team. And that way we can build maybe a specific tool for the individual analysts and people who are responsible for the procurement. But then we can also build like a nice KPI dashboard for the CEO that has that at a glance, like, where are we today? Is it good? Is it bad? What's the trend? And what's the call to action? Right. So that really nice executive level dashboard. And then of course, a tool for the individuals as well. All right, so we do have a question coming in here from LinkedIn. Thank you for posting here. It's good to know that the tech is working. So it says, how to do analytics on semi-structured data where the source application is continuously developing parallelly. To be specific, schema of data is changing continuously. Also, application is e-commerce application where the analytics should need historical data to see trends. So I think I would have to ask a few questions back, but is this an API source, first of all? So maybe you could say, yes, it's an API source, or no, it's like an ODBC connection or something like that. But so Ethan, I guess I'll tee this up to you to start out. So assuming it's an API source, how are you handling schema drift and stuff like that?
Yeah. So this is distilling down what I think this is asking is when you think about data going in the whole life cycle, there could be the concept of data contracts, but very well there might not be. You might have a business application that someone inside your company signed up for as a inventory tool. So you're an e-commerce team, you have an inventory tool. Something like Sin7, for instance, that's a real inventory tool for e-commerce companies. That application is being used by people inside your team. So there's a couple things already going on that might change. One, Sin7 could change their schemas, their endpoints, the fields, all of the above. Number two, you have people in your e-commerce business that could go in and add custom fields, change the way they use those metrics, et cetera. So before you even start doing analytics, things can change and they will change. So you have to understand that part. Then you've got someone like Portable or someone writing a Python script or some other ELT vendor that is going to deal with getting data out of that API, copying it and pasting it into your data warehouse. And again, the question is, are they transforming the data? Is their goal just to mirror whatever is upstream? If they're transforming the data, what happens if something upstream breaks and then their logic breaks and then now it's your data. And then you've got your data team, and the data analyst is writing SQL, or the analytics engineer is writing SQL statements against this that go from raw data in its like third level form to insights. And then that goes into a dashboard. So in that entire pipeline, someone could change the mental definition of what a term means. Sin7 could change their schema. Someone like us could change our transformation if we're doing it. The analyst could change their SQL statement, and then the dashboard could change. So there's a lot of stuff that can break here. And in that world, if you think every one of those is going to involve a data contract, it's just not going to happen. So what you really need to think about is, because like in a company, they could have 50 different business applications, and they're not all being procured by a data team. So to me, the way I think about this is you need to have a very clear understanding of what each part of that puzzle has signed up to do, each part of that pipeline has signed up to do, and how they handle this. So like at Portable, for instance, we know and expect upstream systems to change. The contract we have with clients, the way we describe what we do is our goal is just copy and paste whatever comes out of that API. If they add a field, it's going to show up in your data warehouse. If they change a field, it's going to change. So you can expect that the data coming from Portable will evolve over time. I'm not going to give you a rigorous schema that's going to always be the same, because if Sin7 changes their schema or someone in your team adds a custom field, I don't want another layer of logic on top of that. So the way we handle this is our piece of that pipeline. The goal is take whatever comes out of the API, put it into your data warehouse for you so you can handle it. Things can break and you can write tests and observe the data, et cetera, downstream. But personally, my take is I would rather let things break quickly and loudly and be noisy about it than not, and then have all this stuff string together.
So one of the things that I can say about using a tool like Portable to do it, if you're reading JSON data sources, it's really easy to create a view that just shows you whatever is in that JSON. So if you go on my YouTube channel, actually, so it's at YouTube/@DataDoctor, you'll see like a couple of videos ago, I had how to unnest JSON using DBT. And so you could take a look at that. But what's really cool about that is it's basically schema on read. So if a new column shows up in your JSON, a new column is going to show up in your view, in your staging layer within your data warehouse. And then, so of course that won't propagate all the way to your analytics targets, like your dashboard or your Jupyter notebook or whatever. But at least the step of having that new column show up is automatically done for you, because you've created SQL that's dynamic to just say, hey, Ethan's going to give me whatever is there in the source. And then my SQL is just going to take whatever is there and make a column out of it in Snowflake. And then it's just a matter of populating that column downstream. He did mention it's an ODBC connection. So he's looking at a relational data source. Maybe it's Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server, doesn't matter. Again, if you're using a tool, so if it's a tool like Airbyte, does Portable take any relational databases or no?
We do
Okay,
not.
yeah. So I'll just say like a tool like Airbyte is going to handle schema drift. Fivetran is going to handle schema drift. So I would say look at tools in the market before trying to build something on your own. But if you're trying to do this in Python or something, this is a much longer conversation. So if you have any follow-up questions on that, let us know. Go ahead.
The only other thing here, and it goes back to the idea of only having 5 to 10 dashboards. If you try and solve that problem for every business application and every database inside your organization, you can easily find yourself spending years worth of your time trying to create the most robust, perfect data pipeline for all your databases with all the tables, with all the fields. And you might find out that only one table matters. It might just be orders for your e-commerce company. Do not replicate the other data if you do not need it. Do not think about creating a data contract for the other data if you do not need it. Ignore it all until you know that it's business critical, and then answer these questions. Because if you think about it, there's a ton of different ways to answer that question. If you have to do it 1,000 times because you have 1,000 tables, it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts. If you can stay focused on 5, like, it's a manageable problem, even if you don't do it perfectly. So that's one of the big recommendations is, like, it's going to be painful. And if you do it 1,000 times, it's going to be a lot more painful.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of custom Python extract and load in my time. And although I have like a similar pattern I follow every time, like I'll say like a design template, I implement a little differently each time. And so it evolves over time, and then nothing is the same. And what I really like about using a tool is that those guys are better developers than I am, just hands down. And they figured out the one way to do it. So it's kind of the same every time. So whether you're using Portable, you're using Airbyte, you're using a tool where a world-class developer has figured out their way of doing it, and it's going to be the same every time and very consistent. So I'm much for extract and load. I hardly ever do custom code anymore if I can help it. If I can go buy something at a reasonable price that's going to do it for me, I am always erring on the side of buy versus make. So here is another one. What trends in data management and analytics have shaped Portable's approach to ELT?
Ooh, good question. So I'll give you the quick rundown of why we started where we started, and I'll give you some of the stuff that's happened in the last 4 years. So why did we start where we started? The big trend was everyone moved to the cloud. You have data warehouses. Initially, it was Redshift. Then it was Redshift, Snowflake, BigQuery. That was amazing. You could put all this data there for analytics, created this wave of next generation ETL tools that went by the pattern of ELT, copy your data, put it into a data warehouse. It was really interesting because there were 3 big ones initially, Fivetran, Stitch, and Illuma. Stitch and Illuma both got acquired it was about the same week or two in, I think, 2018, 2019. And so this ecosystem was actually, it shrunk back down to a single large player. So that was part of the reason why we thought it was interesting. It's like, hey, there's going to be a lot of demand for getting data into these cloud data warehouses. And at the time, there weren't a ton of players in the space. So that was part of the main reason why we entered the space. Over the last 4 years, some of the stuff that's really interesting, number one is data sharing. And it doesn't even matter if it's data sharing. I think the fact that getting data into data warehouses has bubbled up to a real concern and or revenue stream for companies like Stripe or Salesforce is a fundamental change in the dynamics of this market. Up until recently, probably the last year or two, none of those companies cared. They were just like, hey, we're going to lean on outside partners for copying and pasting data from Salesforce into our data warehouse, into someone's data warehouse, Stripe. And more of these bigger companies are doing it either natively through sharing or just building their own pipelines. And that's concentrated at the largest data sources. That's because they have the most resources. So I think early when we were starting the company, things like building a Salesforce connector were extremely important to us. I would say nowadays, first of all, you've got 10 different options for a Salesforce connector. So I could go build the 11th option, but in addition to that, you also have Salesforce building a connector. I'm not saying Salesforce is going to build the best connector. I actually, from what I've seen so far, these systems are not building better connectors than just pure play ELT tools because they don't understand the schema drift implications, the user experience a data person expects, et cetera. But I think that's one of the things that's interesting is in the largest part of the market, the databases, the Oracle, SAP, Salesforce, Marketos of the world, that's where a lot of the revenue is today in the ELT market. It's just massive data volume pipelines. And I think a lot of that is hyper competitive right now. And it's going to be even more competitive as data warehouses build native connectors, as upstream systems build their own connectors. So for now, how has that impacted us? It's not our priority. We are continuing to build into the long tail. If you have a niche connector that no one else wants to support and build, I'd rather build 100 of those than one of the largest connectors out there.
So would you say because you're focused on the niche connectors that you're not as worried about Snowflake taking over like through data sharing and stuff like that, or their own?
Someone still has to build the connector and then maintain it when things break. And this stuff's costly. Like if you haven't operationalized it, this stuff's extremely costly. And for us, we spend a lot of time on our operations. So it's one of those things where the upstream systems we're pulling from they barely maintain their APIs. And the downstream systems, it's so small from a data volume perspective and a revenue perspective for them that it's not worth them spinning up a new engineering team for it. So at least in the next few years, I don't expect the same type of encouragement as you're going to see for sure in the biggest connectors.
Totally. At some point last year, Snowflake announced that your Salesforce data is going to be available through Snowflake Data Share. I haven't actually seen that in production yet. I'm not sure if it's actually out yet or not. Maybe if someone knows more than I do about it, you could put it in the chat and let me know. But I immediately thought of that as probably a big hit to Fivetran because Salesforce is one of Fivetran's, in my impression, my experience, is one of their biggest connectors. But doesn't affect you.
So the weird part about this is, from what I've heard about whether it's Salesforce, Stripe, HubSpot's got similar capabilities, is these companies are doing it. They don't have the same features as a pure play ELT tool. And for some reason, they are pricing it higher than existing ELT tools. So it's one of those things where it has to make sense. Like it has to make financial.
When you pay to use the data share, it just doesn't show up as a view and they charge you for it. Okay.
So I can't speak specifically to Salesforce, but the trend I've been seeing for these big companies is they're doing it, but they're not yet competing on cost. They're competing on just, hey, you already bought our solution. Why don't you also buy our pipes? And I think the fact that the sales ops person is buying Salesforce and the data person cares about the data is decoupled enough where the data person is still like, if I can get an ELT tool that actually that's focused on my needs, I haven't seen as much shift as you probably would have thought in the last year or two. But I expect it to continue to become more competitive.
Perfect. So Alexander on YouTube says, hey, I'm currently proposing an update to our data stack to include DBT, Git, and Snowflake. Any recommendations on implementing new software in a company and training the team? So Alexander, I'm curious what you're migrating from. If you could just put that in the chat as well, and we can maybe tailor the response. But go ahead, Ethan. You want to take this one first?
I would love you to take this one first because you do this a lot more than I've done it in my own team and my in big companies, but I know that you're doing this for a lot of teams. So yeah,
absolutely.
I would love your take first.
So I've done many greenfield projects with DBT and Snowflake, and I've done many kind of walk into existing Snowflake environments and also walk into, other non-Snowflake environments, be it, Redshift, Postgres, others. So I love the direction you're going. I support you and encourage you to go with DBT. It really changes the way that you think about transformation and makes it a lot simpler. So, so my advice for going with DBT is I'm going to put a link back in the chat, or maybe I'll just share let me see if I can present my screen for a second. Share screen. Let's do entire screen one. Share. And then I'm going to show. Do you see this, Ethan? Because I've now lost the thing. So here's DBT style guide. And this is my best advice for implementing DBT in your organization is take a look at this and read it quite thoroughly, how we structure our DBT projects, and really get into some of the details here and really try and figure out why they're saying what they're saying. But I love that they give you kind of a folder structure, and these folder structures then materialize as schema structures in your data warehouse, assuming you configure it to do so. But typically in your staging layer, you're going to have a models folder. And then I'm going to look down here at the staging layer, and each source system, not like the tool that loaded it, not the business topic like supply chain or finance, but each source system will have its own folder. And going on from there, you're going to have, the models related to that source system. And then when you move up to the intermediate layer, now it's by business topic. And then finally, this is also hidden from end users. So staging and intermediate are hidden from your end users. These are for developers. And then the smarts layer is exposed to your end users. And now this is also organized by business topic. So I love this this overview here. So that is the best advice for implementing DBT would be do it according to their style guide. Even if things seem funny to you, see if you could figure out why they're proposing this as an industry best practice, and know that tens of thousands of other companies are kind of following their direction. So kind of stick with what they tell you to do would be one thing. And then this goes on and on. We're not going to get too into it, but there's many pages here about how they style their SQL. And then this, you can kind of take it or leave it. But they're very opinionated about import CTEs, and try and understand why they are opinionated about that. Maybe read some of my LinkedIn posts about it. So now let's see if I can stop screen share. So that's my best advice for implementing DBT is use their style guide. And Git just goes along with it. So of course, CI/CD options come up when you're using DBT and Git. Have your main branch protected so no one can commit directly on main. It has to be a merge request or a pull request to get stuff onto main. And then implementing Snowflake. Again, I would follow DBT's recommendations on implementing Snowflake. So there's a blog article from someone named Claire that says how we set up our Snowflake. So if you Google DBT Snowflake, the exact grants we run, that's what it is. I'll say it one more time. DBT Snowflake, the exact grants we run. That will give you an article from someone named Claire that says, here's how we set up our Snowflake environment. We have one database for raw. All of our raw sources, all of our raw data goes in there. Our data from Portable, our data from Fivetran, our data from Airbyte, our data from custom Python scripts, all goes into one database called raw, and it's split out by schemas. And then you have another database called analytics, and that's split just how we looked at in the documentation. If you follow the design pattern that DBT is kind of giving you, you're going to get a solution that's very standard and that other people are using as well. So hopefully that helped, Alexander. He said MySQL, Oracle and MySQL wants to consolidate data for analysis. Yeah, I think everything I said is relevant to you. So let me know if that helped.
Let me add two things to that. One,
yeah,
when it comes to training people internally, and this could be about a data stack, about tools, about anything, I have two favorite tools for this. One, if you do not use Loom today to record your screens, it's the best way to summarize stuff as videos and share it with your team. So like you could go, it's a Chrome extension, you download Loom or something like it, you just click record my screen, and you can do exactly what Jeff just did and record a 1-minute video being like, hey, everyone on the team, we're going to use this for style guides. Like make sure data goes here, here, and here, and save that, put it into Slack or put it onto a wiki page, and then go in and be like, okay, great. Like best practice number 2. And instead of writing out 5 pages of content that no one's ever going to read, you just record another 30-second clip of what you're saying as a best practice inside of your company. I tend to find that video content is really, people are more engaged with it, and it's easy for people to consume. So that's one thing in terms of training your team. In terms of getting, I know you said implementing software more and training the team more so than getting buy-in. The other recommendation I would have here is when you're talking to people higher in the organization than you or outside of the data team, do not use the word dbt, Git, or Snowflake. You need to say, hey, we're putting in place a cloud data stack, whatever this thing is. And if we don't, we can't join data between Oracle and MySQL. That's the problem that you have. And you're going to go figure out with your team the implementation details of how to make that happen. I think if you rewind 3 years ago, you could go pitch to your team, your company, like, hey, we are going to put in all these cool, flashy tools because it made everyone sound cooler. In today's market, you need to go prove that you're going to create value for the company. So I would stay away from using those words when you're pitching for buy-in. And the other thing I would say is, like, find a business use case that is either going to drive revenue or reduce costs, and use that as your North Star when you are setting up your DBT project. And when you are setting up Snowflake, don't do it because you feel like doing it. Do it in service of that one KPI that your marketing team really cares about. And if you can do it all, get that one KPI that no one could get before because you didn't have a cloud data warehouse. Show it to the CMO. Be like, look, now we have this. Now you have a testimonial driving revenue or reducing costs from your CMO to justify the next thing you want to build on top of whatever tech you decide to use. So I would say just videos are really great for training and implementing stuff. And then I would focus on find a persona inside your company who's got a business problem. And as long as you're working towards that, listen to everything Jeff just said.
That's awesome. So I have a great story about Loom because it happened to me yesterday. So I had someone reach out to me from a project that I rolled off over a year ago. And they said, I'm enhancing this Python application you built, but I'm having a problem authenticating into Google using the Google CLI. Can you help me with that? And I said, did you see the Loom video I created on how to log into the CLI? And he goes, oh, yeah, someone sent me that. Let me check that out. And then he emailed me or he messaged me back like 15 minutes later. And he was like, nope, totally got it. Thanks. That's perfect. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more that documenting through Loom is just such a great way to go. Let's see here. So here's one for you. Spreadsheets. To what extent are you using spreadsheets at Portable to help understand how your business is going, if at all?
I use them for analyzing. So, like, I kind of think about data in terms of 4 big buckets. I'm kind of just making this up right now, but in terms of 4 big buckets, there's production things that we care about on a recurring basis throughout the entire quarter. Those go into my 5 dashboards that I look at every day. Our support, failing flows, things we need to fix are all in that same dashboard. It's one of the 5 tabs. So, like, if something's important enough for the company to look at it every day, it's going to be one of those 5 dashboards. Things that might make it onto that list, but I'm not sure about, I will either POC them we use Retool for our visualization layer. I'll either POC them in Retool as a dashboard, just because I'm very familiar with SQL and I can build whatever connector I need to pull data out, or I will POC them with Google Sheets. Just copying and pasting data. I tend to find that spreadsheets, I used to work in finance, so I spent a lot of time in the Excel world. I tend to find that spreadsheets are much easier to use when it comes to financial data and time series trend data relative to using SQL. But I'll use it for back of the envelope calculations, things of that sort. I'll use it for like financial modeling when it comes to, okay, great, like what are our costs? What's our revenue projection, et cetera. I'll export to CSV from a Retool dashboard, all of our ARR numbers or our costs. But yeah, I think it kind of depends on I expect spreadsheets to get thrown away. I expect a lot of dashboards to get thrown away. If something's important enough for our business to look at it every day, it's one of the 5 dashboards I look at. Otherwise, it's a scratch pad.
So it's not like you have this whole infrastructure with like a spreadsheet at the bottom that's like feeding into a big process or anything. So you're pretty much, your analytics are coming from your sources using your tool for the most part, right?
Yeah, and there are scenarios in which either for us or for our customers, we will use Google Sheets to collect data that isn't being collected in a business application. So like a great example of that is our customer base pays us in one of 2 ways. The majority of our revenue comes from self-service clients, people that go to portable.io, they get a demo, they sign up for the product, they swipe a credit card, and it comes in through Stripe. In that world, I can pull the data automatically from Stripe through Portable into BigQuery, which is our data warehouse, and build dashboards on top of it. Awesome. We also have some clients that pay us through contracts, and it's paper contracts. They're paying us through invoices, and I could get the data out of QuickBooks. It's really not worth the time, to be honest with you right now. So I have a spreadsheet, which is called, I forget what it's called. It's like manual contracts. And I standardized the schema I have in that spreadsheet. And then I use that, copy and paste it into BigQuery through Portable, and it goes into the same dashboard. So now I can look at my total ARR numbers broken down by here's the self-service numbers and manual. And the manual ones, if someone signs a new paper contract, I add it to a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet plays the same role as Stripe to fill in the gaps. So I do also use spreadsheets, not just for the analytics side of the house, but also as a interface for storing data and gathering data when I haven't found the perfect application, where we don't yet need a whole accounts receivable tool. I don't want to introduce that right now. Over time we will, but for now I can just have a spreadsheet and track this.
Makes sense. So yeah, spreadsheets are found in every business, even tech companies that build connectors. Yep. So just checking in with the LinkedIn crowd. So thanks everyone for staying with us. We got really good retention here. There still looks like 30 people on LinkedIn. So thank you everyone for hanging out with us. Here's another question. Let's see. Is there any ready-to-use tool for doing schema validation for a mix of structured and semi-structured, which can help the team create noise about schema issues? So I don't know. Can you take a crack at this one? Or
so I'm actually not going to talk about this through the lens of schema validation or databases. I'm going to talk about this through the lens of spreadsheets, because I think a lot of data observability could be handled in a very similar way for data teams, as a lot of finance teams have already solved this problem. So imagine you have a spreadsheet and it's got a bunch of inputs, a bunch of really complex calculations, and a bunch of outputs. It looks pretty similar to an ETL pipeline. You've got your database, you have your schema pipeline moving through, and you have your outputs. The problem with data observability and when things break, what happens is if you see the same problem twice, you did something wrong. So my approach to a lot of this is if something fails in a certain way, I add a check at the end. It could be in a spreadsheet, it might just be a formula. It says, hey, if these two numbers don't add up to 100, something is wrong. If that does not resolve to true, then throw a big red error at the top of my spreadsheet. You could do the same thing in a dashboard. Like you don't have to do, like over time, if you want to move it upstream in your process, you can. But a lot of the stuff around data observability, you don't need fancy tools. You don't need a ton of complex validation. It's just if you see a problem once, it's like, oh, these two things don't line up. I would find a way to codify that. And if it ever happens again, it throws a big red banner at the top of your dashboards, whichever ones have that data in it. And it says something is actively wrong here, because the minute that red banner shows up, everyone knows that you're on top of it. You know this is a problem and you've flagged it, and that you're handling it. Because a lot of these types of problems, you lose trust the minute you do the same thing twice. And after the first time you did it, you said you were never going to do it again. And if you make it very clear that whenever something happens, you're going to codify it.
Yeah.
Like that's where most people, whether you use a tool or not, fail. They don't actually have a way of codifying it. To me, it's just like run a SQL statement. I know you can probably talk more to like DBT tests and stuff like that, but find some way of codifying this stuff so that it never happens a second time is the main takeaway.
Totally. So we mentioned data contracts earlier in the call here. So data contracts are a relatively new concept, at least within DBT. Maybe the concept has been floating around for a few years now, but definitely fairly.
Data contracts have been around since the 80s, depending on who you talk to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know anything about the space. I do not spend a lot of time in that world.
Yeah.
The underlying concept is actually not new. It's just been heavily marketed recently.
The popularity is new.
Yeah, people were not aware of it now there.
So data contracts, especially as they present in DBT, it really just amounts to a test. It's basically a test that says this column is this data type and it's still there. The column is there and it's still that data type, and it'll fail if it's not there or if the data type changes. So that's one thing that you can do is a data contract in DBT. Another thing that you could do, Ethan alluded to, is just a DBT test. right? So if we were talking about to say, hey, this column plus this column should equal that number or something like that. So anything that Ethan said that you could do in the dashboard, you can also do before the data even gets to the dashboard. You can make a test fail. So therefore the dashboard update fails. So then you're in a situation where your dashboard is stale instead of your dashboard is wrong. So that is another thing that I could suggest. I don't know any tools out of the box because I'm not a big data quality tools guy. It's not an area where I've done consulting and have had a lot of exposure, but certainly done hundreds of DBT tests to test for this type of data.
And if you do want to see some of the tools like Metaplane and Monte Carlo are both in this space, I would say, and this kind of goes to another question that we saw in here, which is what advice do you have for getting up to speed? Go get, like, even if you don't plan to use them. Sorry, Kevin. Sorry, Bar, if I'm sending demos your way. But if you want to know best practices, if you want to know the tools you hypothetically could be put in place, even if you decide to write your own SQL statements and build your own alerts yourself, is find a part of the ecosystem you want to learn about, like data observability. Go through either Matt Turk's data landscape, or I wrote an article somewhere on our blog about all the tools in the modern data stack, which we all know the modern data stack's dead, but I wrote the article in case someone Googles the word modern data stack, we show up. But so go into there, be like, okay, here are all the data observability tools, and do one of two things. Number one, sign up for free trials of them and just spend 10 minutes looking through what are the things they expose that are impactful. And number two, and I tend to find this works better to just learn quickly, just get demos. Go to their website, click the get a demo button. Like if you want a demo of Portable and you do not know what we do, go to our website, click get a demo. Klaus on our team will sit down with you and walk you through what we do and how we can help. Even if you don't use it today, at least now you know how easy it is, where we fit into the ecosystem, so that when you do think about a tool for any part of the ecosystem, you've seen 5 or 10 of them and you see the patterns and you see how people should be using them, so that when you do decide it makes sense, either build it in-house or buy something, you've seen enough pattern matching to know where to focus. So I would say if you want to learn about what's going on in the ecosystem, hang out on LinkedIn. You actually see a lot of stuff. And then number two, find a list of all the tools and just book 10 meetings a week. 10 meetings, you can do it in 5 hours. Like that's 1 hour a day. And you'll learn about 10 new tools every single week. You'll get through the data ecosystem in a matter of weeks. And you'll be able to say, I know the best practices for data observability because I've had 6 people pitch me what they have defined as the best practices. And then you can say the same about ELT. You can say the same about consultancies. You could say the same about architecture, data modeling, data contracts, whatever aspect of the ecosystem you want to learn about.
Interesting. So another approach you could take is just staying current with a couple of blogs. Now there's hundreds of newsletters out there, so don't go sign up for them all because then you just won't read any of them. But Seattle Data Guy has a great YouTube channel. He's got a couple years of history in there and a lot of it's still relevant. So like Snowflake versus Databricks was actually the first video that I ever saw and the first time I ever heard of Seattle Data Guy, when I was like, I think I Googled that exact thing with like Snowflake versus Databricks and that came up. Another great one is Zach Wilson. That's his name, right? Zach Wilson. I just started getting into his YouTube. Like he's obviously posts on LinkedIn a lot, but he did a couple live streams recently, which I found really, really valuable. He was talking about data lake and putting, SQL engines on top of data lake, like Spark, Athena, and stuff like that. And I haven't been a very, very big data lake guy, like a very big, like S3 kind of like model your data in S3 guy. And I learned a lot by watching his 1 hour training on that. So you can just, pick 2 or 3 influencers, I'll call them, follow, stay up to date with what they have. And then one other thing I would recommend is go really deep on one tool per year. So for me in like 2020 or I think it was 2020 when I started learning DBT, it was a big chore to learn DBT. I had already been doing SQL for 10, 12 years or something before that. I had my way of modeling in data warehouses. I had my things that I would like to do. And then along comes DBT, a new tool that's kind of taking over. And they had all of their opinions on how your database should be set up. And they had all of their opinions about your development environments. And none of it aligned with my opinions on how I did stuff in the past. So not only did I have to learn a new tool, but I also had to wrap my head around, like, why are they suggesting this stuff that I don't already do? But it only took maybe a weekend or two to actually learn the tool, but then it took several months to really see their line of thinking on why they suggest the best practices that they do suggest. So for that type of deep dive, pick one tool a year and go really deep, learn it inside and out. You can get up to, like, let's say top 50% of developers after like 2 to 3 months at a tool. And then you're spending 6 months to a year in a tool, you're going to be in that upper echelon, that, top 20%. If the top 1% is the best, I never know which direction to go. So you could be that top 20%, after like a year of really doing deep dive. And data engineering in general. So if you apply the logic that the 10,000 hour rule, so it takes 10,000 hours to master a topic, whether that's playing guitar or whether that's data engineering or gymnastics, it doesn't matter what it is. They say after 10,000 hours, you're now an expert. You're better than 99% of the people in the world at that. So if data engineering is your job, you can achieve 10,000 hours in like 3 years. If you're really, really, focusing on the data engineering aspect of it. If something is your hobby, like playing guitar, and you can only do 3 hours a day, it'll take you 10 years to get there. But when you're doing 8 hours a day of something, boom, you can really master stuff. So
one other just resource here. If you do want to follow content creators in different parts of the ecosystem, Mehdi, who creates awesome video content and written content, has pulled together something called datacreators.club. And it is just a list of people that create content in the data world. So what I would recommend, like, to figure out who you actually find insightful and who you don't, is go to datacreators.club and just follow everyone on YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, and it'll just flood your feed with content in this ecosystem. And then from there, be like, okay, great. This person talks way too much about how you should only have 5 dashboards and focus on business value. I don't want to listen to that anymore. And then unfollow them. And it's like, oh, this person does data contracts nonstop, I'm going to follow them. Or like, hey, this person loves streaming architecture, that's my jam for the next 6 months. Like, but it'll give you a very good list of who you might want to follow, just to dig into the data world.
Cool. We have another comment from Ganesh, big fan of Ethan Aaron and his goal of having 10 dashboards for the business. Let's see.
So this to me is pretty straightforward. It's like, let's just pretend like you're a 1-person data team. You're not, but pretend like you are. Because if you're a 10-person data team, you should probably have like 3 people working on a platform and then like 7 people dispersed into different parts of the business, 1 on the leadership team, 1 in marketing, 1 in supply chain, whatever. And each of them can pretend like they're their own 1-person data team. So let's say you're a 1-person data team working on supply chain, and you've got your 5 to 10 dashboards for the supply chain team, right? Like, make it very clear, like, hey, here is the one dashboard. Like, when I say 10 dashboards, I tend to typically mean a single dashboard, 1 link in for us Retool, or 1 link in Looker, 1 link in Tableau, and 10 tabs. That way you always know where the data is going to be, and you can see all the key metrics for all 5 or 10 of them in one spot. At some point, someone will come to you and say, hey, can you just add the 11th tab to this dashboard? And your answer is not no. Your answer is yes. Which of the other 10 are we going to delete? And if you're working with the head of supply chain, it's their dashboard. Like, you've built it for their organization. They know what has become obsolete and what is no longer relevant to their business and what is important. And what you're helping them do is just make sure that whatever is in front of them from a data perspective aligns with their actual priorities. In most scenarios, leaders of businesses don't have more than 5 priorities at any given point in time. If they do, they're stretched way too thin. But maybe they need 10 metrics to understand those 5 priorities. So let's say it's 10 dashboards. The easiest way to enforce it is just, if someone asks for the 11th dashboard, make them tell you what to delete. And that's it. And it's not a question of, hey, we need more resources. It's not a question of any of that. It's just a question of, we want to stay ruthlessly focused. We want to make sure that the 10 things we deliver are the highest value things for this part of the business. What are the top 10? That is all we're going to maintain. And we're going to deep dive into each of those 10 to give you everything you need to run that business. So it's really just a question of saying, yes, but what are we deleting?
That makes a lot of sense. So we're going to wrap up at 1:55 today because I have a 2:00 meeting and I need to decompress for 5 minutes before that. So I just want to let everyone know, if you have one last question, get it in the chat and Ethan and I can take it. And right now, Ethan, I'll tee you up just to kind of continue on what you were just talking about. So can you give us an example of in Portable how you've done this? So maybe you have a new KPI this quarter that you didn't have before or something like that. So let us know, like, first of all, what KPIs you're managing at Portable right now, what keeps you up at night, what numbers you want to see when you wake up in the morning on that dashboard.
Yeah.
And also let us know how you've retired other dashboards in order to facilitate the brain space for this.
Yeah. So right now I'm in the middle of two things. So I know that the dashboards I'm looking at are going to become obsolete in the next month or two. They're not obsolete yet, but they're going to be obsolete in the next month or two. The main reason behind that is we're introducing our API. So anyone that wants to programmatically use Portable's connectors, either in an orchestration tool or resell us to their clients, you will have an API. The front end changes for premium accounts just went live today. And we're looking for beta testers. So first of all, if you're interested, let me know. But so a big focus of ours is going to be adoption on that. Reseller adoption, orchestration companies adopting us and being able to build against our API. So right now we have no KPIs related to that. I have nothing on a dashboard that actually shows that because we didn't have anything in our data model on the back end to actually represent API users. Now we do. Once we get a couple of people live, I'll start adding those dashboards and deprecating other stuff. So that's going to happen over the next few weeks. Once I have a first pass of that, I'm probably just going to delete a bunch of stuff and start over. But what I'm looking at today for our business is very much around our product-led growth funnel. So the way to think about Portable's business is people find us through whether it's LinkedIn or search or events that we do, sign up for our product, and then they move through our actual self-service funnel. So it's like you sign up, then you create a data source, then you create a destination, then you move some data, then you pay us, and then you use this for more connectors, and the whole thing cycles again. So a lot of the stuff I'm looking at right now is like 10 different tabs, or it's probably 6 to 7 different tabs. One of them is like great top of funnel, things like impressions and clicks from search, things like signups for our happy hours and events. From there, it's okay, great. How many signups is that actually driving for our business? Okay, from there, how many of those are converting to free trials? From there, how many of those are free trials are converting to paying us? From there, how many of those paying customers are paying us for multiple things? And then from there, support is always one of our tabs. Like it never goes away. It's also alerts at the top of our dashboard that say, hey, we have a failing flow, or hey, we have a ticket that hasn't been responded to today. And you can get a very good sense of the health of that part of our business, our PLG funnel right now, because that's what I care about right now. By just looking at alerts at the top of the page, is anything failing right now? And then 5 to 10 tabs. And each tab has the name. It's like, great SEO traffic or great signups. And I actually just take the key metric that I care about for our business and I just put it in there in the tab name. So it's like, I can see how many people signed up for our product in the last 30 days directly from the tab. And I can see the conversion rate from signups to free trials directly in the tab. And I can see how much money is currently in a free trial outstanding, currently in a tab. And I can see our total ARR number and our open support issues in the tab numbers before I even click on that tab. But again, that's all going to become obsolete in 3 months, if not much, much, much sooner, because those aren't our priorities. If you think back about 6 months ago, our priority was outbound. It was find target accounts we want to reach out to, connect with them all on LinkedIn, set up meetings with them, figure out the data sources and the destinations they use, and close them. So like the metrics I was looking at had nothing to do with our product funnel. It entirely had to do with our sales funnel. But it changes. Our company priorities change. And as such, the 5 metrics that I care about as a CEO, and therefore what the rest of our company should care about, fundamentally change as well. I think you're muted, Jeff. Jeff, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I think that, this question about 10 dashboards was it was my primary question coming into the call. Ganesh asked it again, and I really like hearing just the real life example of how you've done this, and you already know that you're going to do it again as you're rolling out your API, and your interests are going to change. So I think this is good advice for all of us to take when it's like, hey, know what your interest is this quarter or this half or this year, and create the dashboards to cater to that interest or that important KPI. And not everything can be top priority. Not everything can be the most important thing anymore. So you can not only delete the dashboards, you can delete the data pipelines, you can delete the data if you want to.
I do. The one thing about the migration process, by the way, I don't go in and just delete the tabs, because if you just delete the tabs or just delete the charts, you still have a bunch of SQL written somewhere and a bunch of connectors piped into that SQL. I tend to, especially when I'm going through like a heavyweight migration, like when I know our company priorities have shifted entirely, I will hard version our KPI dashboard. I will just spin up a blank version from scratch. I will create the whole tab thing, the alerts from the top, and I will just start over. And I will start by figuring out what connectors we have to keep on in Portable, or direct connections to Postgres. I will set those up first, turn everything else off. So I start all the way at the top of the funnel. If you're not using the connector, turn it off, and then delete it out of Portable or delete it out of wherever, because it'll save you money and it's noise. And then I will write the SQL statements from scratch or copy and paste them if I'm reusing anything from before. And then I build the dashboards. It takes, for me, anywhere from 2 to 3 days to go from nothing to literally all the KPIs I need to scaffold out what matters to our business. And then I will just delete it all. I will delete the old version of our KPI dashboard, because now you don't have to worry about, to Ganesh's earlier question, like what happens if all this stuff changes? It's like, if I'm no longer looking at a chart that depends on that SQL query, which depends on that data source, I don't care if the schema changed. It's irrelevant to our business right now. So it's gone. And something about that's extremely cleansing and makes you feel good as a data person when you know all the SQL that you just wrote, like you just wrote it. Like there's no gotchas in there that are hidden from 3 years ago.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks, Ethan, for your time. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Thanks for all the questions. And anything else before we go, Ethan?
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me,
All right.
Jeff.
Yeah, have a good one. Have a good weekend.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.